Unless a community is very small and remote, it will have more than one school organized as a school district or local educational agency. 14,000 districts and approximately 140,000 schools operate at this time in the United States. Some districts only have one elementary school, others have only secondary schools. They can be different in size and population. The school district is governed by the school board, and its day-to-day operations are led by the superintendent. Your official hiring as a teacher will be done by the superintendent in most cases, who makes the recommendation to the school board. Sometimes there is school board members in on the interviews. Legal authority for operating local school system is assigned to the local school board of education through the state status. Most school boards in the U.S. are elected by popular vote and special nonpartisan elections in which candidates are not associated with a particular political party. In some cities, the mayor will appoint the school board members. Teachers cannot be board members in the district where they teach, however, they can be board members in districts where they live if they teach in a different district. Powers and duties of the school board vary from state to state. The school board's major function is the development of policy for the local district, policy that must be in harmony with both federal and state laws. Powers usually include the power to obtain revenue, maintain schools, purchase sites and build buildings, purchase materials and supplies, organize and provide programs of study, employ necessary workers and regulate their services, admit and assign pupils to school, and control their conduct. Some duties of the school board are mandatory, whereas others are discretionary. For example, the state has given the boards the power to employ teachers. They must do this. The power cannot be delegated even to the school superintendent. One of the primary duties of the local board is to select the chief executive officer or CEO, the superintendent. Some school district superintendents are elected by voters. In this situation, superintendent selection is a political process just like you use for elections for mayors. Main responsibility for superintendent is the day-to-day operations of the school district, responding to interests of the school board members, planning the district's budget, and defining the district's long-term aspirations. This person is expected to be visible in the community and to provide overall leadership for the district. Quality of educational programs of school districts is influenced strongly by the leadership that the Board of Education and the superintendent provide. Without the communication and support of high expectation by boards and superintendents, high-quality education is not likely to be achieved. The supervisor typically has the authority to direct, monitor, and evaluate the work of a subordinate. One person that has the type of authority over another is a line relationship. When there is no formal supervisor authority of one person over another, they have a staff relationship. They are in a staff relationship that is advisory. Only the principal has the final authority to direct what teachers do or cannot do. The superintendent of the schools works with staff to carry out the district's program of education. Superintendents, assistant superintendents, and principals are line officers vested with the authority over the people below them on the chart on page 234. Each person is directly responsible to the official above and must work through the person in dealing with higher official. Staff under administration include librarians, curriculum coordinators, staff developers, guidance officers, transportation officers. They are responsible to their respective supervisors but have no line authority over teachers. One important task of school districts is to obtain and spend money required for schooling. About $10,700 per pupil was spent in 2013 for schooling. 2/3 of the amount is directed spending on instruction, 1/3 is spent on other components. School buses must be purchased, have drivers, direct staff, administrators must report to the state, federal governments about activities and how funds are spent. School buildings have to be constructed and maintained. Intermediate unit. This organization functions between the State Department of Education and the local school districts. The fundamental purpose of an intermediate unit is to provide services that an individual district cannot effectively or economically provide. Cooperative provisions for special education and vocations, technical educations have been very successful. They can provide audio-visual libraries, centralized purchasing, and service trainings for teachers and principals, any other workers in the school, health services, instructional materials, laboratories, legal services, and special consultant services. For the most part, schools are organized in the same way in each state. Schools are organized pretty much the same in other countries too. Classrooms with quarters for movement of students in a central office. It has large spaces for a cafeteria, gymnasium, and an auditorium. Staff lounge, outside spaces for playground, athletics, parking, and a driveway for dropping off and picking up students. Some educational critics see this architecture as interfering with the need to introduce new educational practice. The walls restrict communication between teachers and channel the flow of student traffic. Teachers have to make an effort to see what goes on in other classrooms. Even when a school is built with the attempt to change the interior spaces, teachers and students still want to preserve the egg crate concept. Even for an elementary that is built with an open design, that means no walls, so everything can be seen, teachers and students have usually set up zones that are equivalent to different classrooms. They can do this by the furniture in the rooms, bookshelves, and screens. Some teachers criticize the open floor plan for one major flaw. There is no way to not hear the next door classroom and adjacent classrooms to them. One key to the success of an open floor plan is to be sure the building is designed in ways to control or dampen the noise. The principal is the final authority at a school. The principal's responsibilities include instructional leadership, community relationship, supervision of staff, teachers, secretaries, custodial, teacher selection and evaluations, students, buildings and grounds, provisions of contracts, administration of the attendance offices, and all budgets. The principal is the aligned relationship with the school district superintendent. System principals. Large elementary schools and most junior highs, middle schools, and high schools have one or more additional administrators. Large high schools have several assistant or vice principals and other administrators that direct or dean titles, such as director of athletics or dean of students. These administrators share the tasks of the principal and provide additional avenues of communication between teachers, students, staff, parents, and the community, and the district office. Department heads and team leaders. Grade level or team leaders are full-time teachers who assume a communication or coordinator role for their grade levels or team. Junior high schools and high schools have department chairs. Departments are organized around the major subject areas: math, science, English, and social studies, and other curricula, athletics, and music, and etc. Teachers are busy in the classroom working with their students, and this is where the egg crate architectural school can be a problem. Unless special mechanisms are used, such as regular departments, such grade level meetings, individual teachers can easily become isolated from the whole school. Important teacher role is the resource teacher, also known as a special education teacher. In some schools, these teachers will spend all day with a small number of students who have IEPs. In other schools, the special education teacher will pull out students who need supplemental instruction in the regular classroom. Instructional specialists are teachers with master's degrees who are specialized in literacy, math, and technologies. Instructional specialists lead school-based and professional development sessions, coach all teachers, and facilitate using data about student learning to plan instruction. School support staff. A school has other personnel who support administrators and teachers. The school secretary, custodial to help clean the school and your classrooms. SROs in a school are sworn law officers. They may be members of the local police, or they may be employed by the school district. Year-round schools. The normal school year of 9 to 10 months with vacations all summer is often criticized. One interesting solution is a year-round school. A year-round school spreads the time in school across 12 months. One way to do this is have multiple tracks of 6 to 8 weeks. During 1 month, 1/4 to 1/3 of the students will be on vacation, the other will be attending class. And this way students have more frequent but shorter times away from school. An additional advantage is that the school site can handle more students on an annual basis. 4-day weeks. Some rural schools that have school bus traveling long distance have been implementing 4-day school week. Each of the 4 days is a little bit longer, but on the 5th day there is no school. Staggered start time, a very effective solution to having several thousand kids arrive at a school at the same time as different start times. For example, 9th and 10th graders arrive for the beginning of first period, 11th and 12th don't arrive until the beginning of second hour. Late start times for high schools. Adolescents' biological clocks have them not wanting to get up early in the morning, whereas elementary school students are more likely to wake up early. Elementary schools have an earlier start time, with secondary schools starting later in the morning. One problem with this is the bus scheduling, which is perceived as too difficult to run in reverse, picking up elementary students first. Another structure for increasing time for teaching and learning is to lengthen the school day. Feeder school alignment. In the majority of school districts, communication and coordinating across levels of schooling are quite limited. A few districts have created an organization arrangement that places a high school and a junior high middle school and an elementary school whose students feed into one unit. In this alignment, there can be vertical communication and coordinating the results in continuity around curriculum and more communication among administrators and teachers. State Board of Education are both regulatory and advisory. Regulatory functions include the establishment of standards for issuing and revoking teacher licenses, establishment of standards for approving and accrediting schools, and the development and enforcement of uniform systems for gathering and reporting educational data. Advisory functions include considering the educational needs of the state, both long and short term, and recommending to the governor and legislators ways of meeting these standards. In studying school problems and suggesting and analyzing proposals, state boards of education can be invaluable to the legislators, especially because the legislators are under pressure to decide many different issues. State board membership. Members of the State Board of Education get positions in various ways. Some are appointed by the governor with confirmation by the Senate. In other states, the State Board of Education may be elected by the people. Legislators are state policy makers for education, and state legislators create state departments of education to execute state policy. Department of Education, also known as the State Educational Agency, is directed by the chief state school officers. Their 5 activities include operational. Operational activities are those in which the State Department of Education directly administers schools and services such as the School of the Blind. 2. Regulatory. The SCA personnel now regularly audit schools' performance on state tests, review school implemental plans, and force reconstructing of low-performing schools and school districts. Developmental activities are directed at improving performance across all schools and districts. They include planning, staffing, and researching. Public support and cooperative activities include public relations, public activities with the legislature and governor in relations with various other governmental and non-governmental agencies, and monitoring the functions has become increasingly important as the federal government has pressed for more accountability. School systems nationwide receive their funds from federal, state, and local sources. 45.6 is state dollars, local dollars is 45.3, and 9% is federal dollars. However, if you work on a Native American reservation at a public school, you receive more funding from the federal government because you don't have those local dollars coming in. Key financing questions. When financing education is considered, some of the questions are: how much do I pay? How much will my school receive? Does each school across the state have the same amount of funding? And this is an equity question. Is there enough funding so that the students can achieve? This is an adequacy and sufficiency question.